Cool. Hey guys, thanks for joining me on the Inside Word today. Last week you would have heard Pete talk about how Jesus sacrificed himself for the benefit of others, and he talked about the kingdom of self and what's God asking you to let go of so that others would benefit. Today I want to continue on with that theme with a little bit of a different slant, because when I first started out in ministry, my motto, I think, was I'd rather burn out than fizzle out. I was burning the candle at both ends, and I thought that's what sacrifice was, just burning myself out for the benefit of other people. But that's not sustainable, and it's not actually a life worth imitating. In 1 Corinthians 11, Paul talks about, "Be imitators of me as I imitate Christ." And to be honest, that's a concept that I haven't exactly felt comfortable with until recently. I would rather people imitate Jesus. But the concept of imitating me as I imitate Christ is actually the core of being a disciple who makes disciples who make disciples, which is the great commission that Jesus has called us all to, right? A couple of years ago, I heard a statement that life happens in the margins. So what are the margins? The margins are the space between our load and our limits. It's the amount allowed beyond that which is needed. Margin is the gap. It's the space between breathing freely and suffocating. For me, it's the margin between looking after myself so I have something to give and serving with my whole life. Sacrifice is giving up something that we value for the sake of other considerations. But if I give up what I can't afford to give, I can't sustain that. We see in Jesus' life that he lived a life of sacrifice, a life of interruption, but he still prioritized, he still focused his attention on what was important. He often withdrew to be with the Father. He never sacrificed those moments. And often we see in ministry people sacrificing their own health or their family for the sake of ministry. That's not sacrifice. That's not sustainable. What is sustainable? Well, a few years ago, God asked me and my husband to lay down the carefully guarded security of our home and to invite someone else who was at the time homeless to live with us. It was something that took us a lot of adjusting to actually include someone, not just in our house, but into our home and into our family. But to be honest, to see the change that God did in their world as a result of being included in a family is so rewarding. It was so worth it. And it was actually something that for us was sustainable. In Luke 6:27, Jesus says, "To you who are ready for the truth, to you who are leaders, I say this, love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer for that person. If someone slaps you in the face, stand there and take it. If someone grabs your shirt, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. If someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit-for-tat stuff. Live generously." And that's the life that we see Jesus live. He lived a life of generosity. He sacrificed, but he sacrificed what he could afford to sacrifice. And ultimately, he sacrificed his life when the time came. He understood what mattered to God, and he made room for God to move. I remember hearing Heidi Baker talk about a time she was on her way to a discipleship meeting, which she was leading. But on her way, she saw a blind woman sitting in the sun. It was the hot time of the day. It was Mozambique's sun beating down on this woman. But the woman was blind and couldn't move herself into the shade. And Heidi stopped and asked her, "What's your name?" And the woman said, "I have no name." She wasn't deemed to be worthy enough to even warrant a name, and so Heidi gave her a name. Not only did she give her a name, but she prayed for her, and the woman's blind eyes were open. and she received Jesus Christ as her Lord and Saviour that day. And it made Heidi late for her meeting, but it was what God wanted her to be doing. She had room in her world. She created space. She sacrificed what she wanted to do for what she knew God was calling her to do. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions just in finishing today. Do you have enough margin in your life that you can afford to sacrifice something without taking you from breathing freely to suffocating? If you don't, that's okay, but I'd encourage you to speak to somebody who could help you to create some margins in your world. The Connect team have some great resources for that, and they would be totally open to you guys contacting them and gleaning from them. The other question is, how is God leading you to give up something for the sake of others? See, when we give out of the excess of our lives, God's glorified. And we are able to have a sustained impact that advances the kingdom without depleting us. I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope you've learned something. I know I certainly have. Have a great week.